All right, we'll start with our Q&A slash relationship slash Q&A relationship. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and God, amen. All right, who would like to start the first Q, which would then come for the next A? Yalla.
So, I understand we're supposed to deal with everybody with love, but after maybe you had a bad interaction with somebody, at what point would you be dealing with love or you're just fake? And is it wrong to be fake? You don't love them.
Okay, so that's a good question. I'm sure something everybody in this room can relate to, right? You have a bad interaction with someone, so now you kind of don't really like them. And I think the best answer I've heard is there's a difference between liking and loving. Okay, so you don't have to like everybody. You don't have to hang out with everybody. You don't have to go on vacation with everybody. You don't have to marry everybody. Okay. But you have to love everybody, right? And so love is a different kind of thing, right? Because I can love you and not stand you, right? This person just annoys me. Every time he comes in, he's showboating, he's talking, he's whatever, right? And you're like, actually, I can't even stand them, right? But I can still love them in the sense that I can be sacrificial towards them. And if when that person calls me is in need, I'm absolutely going to help them. Right. So, but I can start to put some distance between us. Right. I don't have to hang out all the time if everything he or she says annoys me and bugs me, and so that's fine. It's not like that's. I don't have to be everyone's friend. Like we don't have to be close. Right. But that's different than not loving you. Right? Having said that, that also doesn't open us up carte blanche to saying. And I think, and I'll be honest, this generation has a little bit more I've seen of this than I have before, which is everyone's into red flags, right? And so anytime anyone says anything, like, oh, red flag, and you're like, that's not a red flag. That's just you disagree with them, and they're saying something you don't like. And all of a sudden you're red flagging it. And so this generation has a little bit, and I don't like to attack your generation, but I don't think it's your fault. There's just less of a tolerance than I think like someone like I had. Like if I wanted, and I'll just give you a small, if I wanted to hear a song, okay, just want to hear music. There's a song I wanted to hear. How do I hear it? I would sit there and listen to the radio for hours, waiting and hoping that the song comes on. I just sat there. And if I was lucky enough, and I have a tape recorder, I could hit record on the radio, and I could record that song while it was on. Of course, the DJ would talk over the song, right, and ruin the first 10, 30 seconds of it, right? But I had to wait for them, and sometimes I wait for 2 hours while I'm studying, and the song didn't come on. Man, all right, I'll listen tomorrow. Maybe it'll come on tomorrow. Right? Those are my options. Okay, you don't have to wait. Right? You're like, if I want to hear this song right now, I'm going to hear this song right now. Like, for you, the concept of waiting to hear a song is ridiculous, right? And I'll hear from second 18 to second 45, and I just like that one part. I don't want to hear the beginning of the song, the end of the song. I just want that one part of the song. And that's the part I'm going to get right now. Right? That's going to do something to you. That's going to make you different, right? When I wanted a picture frame, I went to Walmart, and they had 4 frames. They had a white one, a black one, and a beige one. And I picked, right? You don't pick like that. You go to Amazon, and you pick from 4,000 frames. And I get it exactly the way I want, the color I want, the style I want. And if I don't, I return it, and I get the one I want. Because I want this. I don't want that. This has characteristics I don't like. So I'm not going to have that. Well, people aren't like that, right? People are full of things we don't like. Everyone is, right? And you don't get to swipe left every time, and we do this on apps, right? No, you're on Amazon, right? Just picking. Yeah, well, this guy's got this, and this. She's got that. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, this one's got 5 stars. Okay, I'll go with that one. All right? And no matter how many things you have, people aren't like this. Right? People are full of garbage, full of junk, full of egos, full of tempers, full of jealousy, full of control, full of manipulation, full of, everything. Right? And so you guys just have a lower tolerance for Oh, well, that's not what I want. Okay, well, suck it up. It sucks, huh? Yeah, but that's the way it is. And you're just like, no, I don't want that. I want to listen to this song right now. Oh my God, I don't have reception. I can't get the song right now. That's a crisis for you guys, right? So when my partner doesn't do what I want right now, it's like, could you please do what I need right now? Because I haven't been trained to not get what I want right now for a long time. And so, anyway, so what I'm saying is, you can say, oh, well, I don't like that person, so I'm just not going to be their friend. Be careful, because you're going to be real alone real fast, with that attitude, right? If every time someone does anything you don't like, you're like, yeah, we're just not friends anymore because I saw some red flags. They like Taco Bell, I like Del Taco, red flag. Okay, you need to check yourself a little bit and make sure you're not dismissing every friend on earth because you're red flagging them. You guys love to red flag each other. Cancel.
Do you think
Block.
that's a red flag, the fact that people see you look at red flags too much?
That is a red flag, actually. Yeah, I think people just use that word. It's overused,
Yeah.
right? I mean, red flag, couple will be going together and then they get in a big fight. They're like, yeah, this isn't going to work. I was like, why? We got in a fight. Yeah, big fight. Oh. Welcome. It's the first of 5,000 fights. And they're just like, no, we're not getting along. You get through it. You compromise, she compromises. That's how this works, right? But it's like, no, this isn't what I want right now. Okay. That's okay. You can be not what you want right now. And you're going to be okay with that. And at some level, that's really what the Lent is trying to do, right? Because if you think about life is full of, I want that parent, but I got this parent. All right? I want that sibling, but I got this sibling. I want that job, but I got this job instead. I wanted this kind of boss, but I got that kind of boss. I wanted this kind of kid, but I got that kind of kid. I wanted this kind of husband, but I got that kind of husband. Life is full of disappointment, right? I wanted this job, I got that job. I wanted to get in this school, but I got into that school. I wanted to be a doctor, I became a pharmacist, right? It's full of disappointment. Life is full of disappointment, right? I want this and I got that, okay? And the church, at a very, very basic level, is trying to train you to be okay with it, right? I want to eat this kind of food, but I'm going to have that kind of food. And I'm going to be okay with it, right? It's a very basic level. It's training, you want that, that's nice, but this is what you're going to have. And you're going to be okay with it, right? Because the rest of your life is full of this. I wanted that kind of professor, but I got this kind of professor. And it goes on, right? So the church is teaching us, right? Because the fast itself isn't really the thing, right? It's not like it's you broke the fast, that's a sin. No, the fast is a exercise that's training me for the real work of being a Christian. The real work of being a Christian is dealing with someone I don't like, or dealing with a situation I don't like, or a husband or a wife I don't like, right? And being okay with that. Like, okay, that's not what I want, but that's what that's what I have. That's what I got. This is the job I have. This is the boss I have. This is the house I live in. This is the neighborhood I'm in. This is my neighbor. Life's full of disappointment, right? And the fast is kind of a very, very basic level of saying, okay, we're going to teach ourselves how to be okay, so that the real work of being a Christian is dealing with other people, not eating tameya, right? That's not really the point of being a Christian, is having fava beans or falafel, right, or vegetarian food, right? The real work is interacting with people I don't like, or, that I don't get along with, not that I don't like. Or I cannot like them, that's fine. Yes?
Would you say it's healthy then for myself to put myself to accept others, like, and hang out in that relationship, even if I don't like them, to continue to hang out, to try to say, like, some people grow on you, so you might not like them in the beginning, but you continue to hang out with them, even if you don't like them, they kind of grow on you. So would you say it's healthy to kind of pressure yourself to stay in that uncomfortable position so you can grow and mature?
I would absolutely say that. Because, what ends up happening is you learn to see people, right? Because, look, none of us are perfect, right? I mean, if you don't think you annoy a lot of people, you're delusional, you annoy people, right? Someone told me a funny joke, a funny meme. It said, someone's therapist knows all about you. It's funny. So, someone's therapist knows everything about you. So, welcome to the world, right? You all piss someone off, right? That's just the way it works, okay? And you are the conversation piece. So, and my reaction to that is always, like when someone annoys me and someone's like, "Are you going to take that?" Or "You going to?" It's like, well, I just hope I'm going to take it, and I just hope that when I annoy someone else, that they tolerate me, because I also say a lot of things I shouldn't say, and I do a lot of things I shouldn't do, and I mess up a lot, and you all know me, I'm kind of big mouth, flamboyant, and I say things I probably shouldn't say, and I rub people the wrong way, right? So I just hope people give me that same grace, right, when I mess up. Right? So I would absolutely say, yeah, it is, because what you learn to do is, in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, there he goes again, right? He's going to talk all about his car, right? Or there she goes again, and she's going to brag about her kid. Or there he goes, and you all know these people, right? And you've all got a couple of them in your life that just trigger you, right? And then after a while, you just get used to it. You're just like, yeah, this is the part where he jumps in about his PhD, right? This is where he talks about his car. This is where she talks about whatever, right? And there she is, right on cue. This reminds me of when I was, here comes a story, the one we've heard 89 times, right? And then you just kind of enjoy it. You're like, that's just who she is. She's going to tell that story. She loves that story, right? And I'm not sick and tired and pissed off as she's telling that story. Here, she's going to tell that story tomorrow, right? As she gets the opportunity. And then you just kind of take people like this. That's who she is. That's who he is, right? And I'm going to love them the way they are, right? Because I think a lot of times, people do things to us, right? And we try to change them. And that's just not going to happen. It just doesn't work that way, right? You don't change anybody. Like I've told you many times, you can't even change yourself, right? You can work on yourself for a decade and then try to change yourself. Good luck, right? No one's changing, right? We can massage on the edges, but no one's changing, right? So trying to change someone is not going to work, right? Making them do the things you want. The only person you got a shot at is change me to accept them. And you hope that they don't try to change you, because there's people who try to change you, right? You tell them something, they go, yeah, you know what your problem is? You need to work on blah, blah, blah. You need to be more, politically correct. You need to be friendlier. You need to be blah, blah, blah. If you're only like me, then, you wouldn't have this problem. No, that's not good advice. That doesn't help. That's just antagonizing, right? So people try to change us all the time. We do the same. And everyone should just work on not doing that. Right? I'm just going to accept you and you just accept me. Rather than focus on changing people. Yes? Did I answer your question? Sorry. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Pivoting off to a completely different topic, if you do not mind.
No?
Okay. My question revolves around in Genesis, where it says, us as being in the image of God, that we have dominion over everything around us, right? So the plants, the animals, the everything. I guess this is less of a question and more of a complaint. In the sense that I feel it almost made us as human beings so pompous to the rest of the world around us, to the plants, the food, the animals, everything, and we believe that everything works in our favor, while all of this is all a creation of God as well. So how does the church feel about that particular statement, and to what limitations does it have? And as Christians today, how can we incorporate that into our daily life?
That's a good question. I actually, so in the SoundCloud that someone created, I actually have a talk on being an environmentalist, and how that is really an Orthodox Christian calling, right? Because we weren't told to have dominion over the world as in to destroy it, because it's not ours, right? we're called to be stewards of the earth, right? And as a steward, you're taking care of something that's not yours, that you did not create, that you did not make, that you have no ownership in, but it's yours to be to take over, to protect and to serve. And so we're actually called to be environmentalists in the deepest sense of the word, right? In fact, if you look at the way the monks lived, they lived with a very small, if you will, footprint, right? Now we call it a carbon footprint, but back then it was just a footprint, like very simple, and not exploit as many resources as I can. The earth isn't mine. It's a gift from God. It was created for me as a gift. It's not mine, right? So I don't get to destroy it, right? And it's just like if someone gives me a car and says, here's a car for you to use, I don't get to like destroy the car and say, great, my car. No, because I have to pass the car on to someone else. So in fact, it's actually odd to me that the environment is a political topic in where Christians don't take the side of the environment. I think it's because it's Republican, Democrat, and so the Democrats are environmentalists, so then the Christians think, oh, I can't be environmentalist because that's what Democrats do, I think is what's happening. But it surprises me that more people aren't environmentalists, because we all know we're called to be stewards of the earth. And as we're in the image and likeness of God, God created the world and takes care of the world, and I'm an extension of him on earth. Right? So I have to do his will. Right? He would not destroy his own planet. Right? He gave it to us as a gift. Mm-hmm. Yes.
We've talked about this before. I liked your answer, so I'd like everyone to hear it. I'm just curious.
Hopefully I say the same thing, because often I don't. Depends what I had for dinner.
I was curious about,
just kidding.
like, pre-marriage, what role, like, physical attraction or touch plays. Because I think it's, like, more than zero, but it's obviously we have things that are safe for marriage. And how to not let it overtake the relationship, but also how to not be, like, scared of it.
I don't remember what I said.
You talked about a tangerine.
Tangerine? What did I say?
Okay, so you're saying how
I don't remember.
How like physical touch given by God, and like it's good, but like you think of a tangerine as a whole unit, and if you just take vitamin C out and put it in a pill.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was good.
Yeah. Of course you said.
Remind me more of what I said. Okay, so that's okay. I think I remember what I said. So as far as like the physical part of a relationship, right? So, I don't think it does us it doesn't do marriage or God any justice to say the physical part's bad, right? Until you're married and then do whatever you want. I think the physical part of any relationship, that's a God-given feeling, right? And that kind of intimacy is important. And between a couple, right, there has to be, when you're dating someone, there has to be a spark, right? I think that's important. It shouldn't just be, he's a doctor and he's this and he's that and he has all this list of things, right? Or she has all these list of things. But I see her as my sister, She doesn't want you to marry her as a sister, right? And he doesn't want to be married as a nice brother. That's not what he's interested in, right? So there has to be a physical spark, right? But what can happen is, it's a package. It's a whole tangerine. That's a great analogy. I don't remember, right? And what we try to do as Americans, right, is we often, instead of eating the fruit, right, we find out vitamin C is good for you, right? So we figure out a way to extract vitamin C out of a tangerine or citrus or whatever, we make them into pills, right? And this pill is equivalent to 17 oranges, right? And I take 8 pills, right? And I've had 900 oranges, right? Or whatever that math adds up to. I can't even see you guys in the back. Whatever. So then, have some matcha green on the carpet. So we try to take this one piece out, right? And say, this is the good piece. And so let's take vitamin C out, right? Well, it turns out When you have the orange, it has a lot more things in it, right? It's got fiber, it's got folic acid, it's perfectly combined, right? Even like milk, you can't absorb calcium without vitamin D, it turns out, right? So your body, so just taking calcium pills was not the same as drinking milk, right? Or whatever. So when we learn more about nutrition, we learn that deconstructing something actually destroys it, right? Everything we've learned about eating right and nutrition can be summarized with the following sentence: eat it as close as you can to the way God made it, right? And now we've moved back to this movement: natural, organic, whole, less ingredients, no barcode. This is all the ways we talk about nutrition now, because we spent the last couple decades extracting pieces out of it, right? So the point I was making with Jojo was, the physical part is a beautiful part of a relationship, right? But it comes as part of a package, right? It comes as part of commitment and sacrifice and love and all these other pieces that come in it, right? And then we as Americans, we would try to extract that one piece out, right? And say, let's do that thing. That thing, I like that thing, so I'm going to do more of that thing, right? So you have apps to hook up, and you have porn, and you have all kinds of stuff that just pull out this one piece out of a very complicated, beautiful relationship, right? And say, let's do that one thing because that's a good thing, right? Well, obviously, that it doesn't work like that, right? And if you try to extract one thing out of everything else, it's not the way God made it, right? So it's not as fulfilling. Did I say that? Is that what I said?
Pretty much.
Did I say anything better the first time? I don't know.
No, that was it.
Because sometimes I get on a roll and it's really good, and I can't remember what I said.
No, that was good. I was just curious if you have any idea of markers to know if it's being balanced or not.
Yeah, how far is too far, and what's appropriate, what isn't?
Nothing's appropriate for you.
That's what you helped raise me since I was 3, and I agree with that part.
Everything's too far. No boys. No, I think the answer is different for everybody, right? And so that's an impossible question to answer. Right? So are you 17? Are you 27? It's going to make a difference, okay? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, there's like your own personal spiritual life, right? Your own commitment, your own walk with God, right? And so I think every couple sort of has to find that balance in their own relationship, right? And I also don't think at the expense of protecting and ensuring purity that we go so far as to instill all kinds of fear and anxiety and, let's just be blunt, you're all in college, right? There are so many people out there that just talk so negatively about sex, and you have to stay pure, and you have to be a virgin, and you have to be blah, 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 blah. And it creates such an unhealthy relationship with sex and your own body, and how I'm ashamed of my body, and I'm ashamed of sex, and I'm ashamed of my feelings. There are people that when they get married can't have sex, right? And there are couples that the girl's like, I just can't. It's so impure and disgusting. I can't do it. And the guy's like, I think we should be divorced soon, right? And they do, and they get divorced, and she can't get over it because for the last 27 years, she was taught this is a bad, filthy thing that should never happen. And now her mom's saying, go have sex. And it's like, you just can't flip that switch, right? Because you've created an unhealthy sex is a gift from God. It's a beautiful thing, right? It's not something to be hated and disgusted and hate my body and hate. That's the wrong attitude, right? Okay. Now, there are, like anything else, right? There's the way God presented it to us. He presented it to us in the best possible way. Not that if you do this other thing, we're going to send you to hell in a handbasket, right? But there's a better way, right? And the better way is a more fulfilling way. It's not the easiest way, but it's a more fulfilling way, right? As opposed to this is bad, this is haram, this is whatever, right? So, what's too far and what's not. I'm not going to get into that. That's between you and your partner, and you and your confession father, and you and God, right? And that's not, I don't like to get into, you can hold hands when, the first 3 months, and then you can kiss the second 3 months, and that's just stupid, right? I'm not going to do any of those things, right? I think every couple finds their own way, right? But what's unhealthy is this is haram and this is wrong and this is, I mean, I'll tell you a story that just infuriates me every time I hear it. Is there's a Sunday school teacher who's still out there that should be shot, and she said she told a bunch of teenage girls, right, that she took out a piece of paper, right, a nice piece of paper from copy machine, right, and she said, "This is you," and then she crumbled it up, right, and she crumbled up into a ball, and she unfolded it and said, "This is you after you lose your virginity." Right? And you see how I can uncrumble it, but it'll never look the same. It'll never be the same. It's horrible, right? So what is that? God can't uncrumble a piece of paper. God can raise the dead, so he can't what about St. Mary of Egypt? What about half the saints that are on that wall? I mean, he can't fix that? It's outside his ability? He can't make you pure again? What? What is this? Right? It's Islam is what it is. Right? That's straight out of Islam. Okay? But that kind of talk, right now, I understand what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to keep girls pure. I get it. That's nice. We all agree that's a nice objective. Okay? Here's the problem with your approach. Your approach is bad for a couple of reasons. First problem is some of the girls in that room are already crumbled. So now we got a problem. Because now you've alienated every single one of those girls, and every one of those girls like, oh, shoot, I'm not talking that servant ever. I'm not talking to Abuna ever. I'm crumbled. What if people find out I'm crumbled? What if someone in the church knows? What if? Right? So the first thing is, whoever's in the audience that's already crumbled, you just lost them. Like lost them. Next thing you know, they may not be crumbled now, but in 5 years or 4 years or 2 years, they go to college and they get crumbled. Now what? Oh, I remember what the servant said about this. I'm crumbled. I'll never be the same again. God can't fix me, I guess. Right? So now your approach is really bad. Right? So we have to be thoughtful about these things, right? So what's too far? There's no fast, hard rules, Age is a big factor. Your spiritual life is a big factor. Do we make mistakes? Sure. Do we go too far sometimes? Sure, right? The problem the problem isn't I went too far. The problem is, now that I've gone this far, I might as well go farther and just stay there. And I guess I can't talk to my priest anymore. I can't talk to anyone in church anymore. I guess I'm done. That's Satan talking in our ear, right? That's the problem. Not did I hold hands too much, or did I kiss too much, or did I do whatever too much. That's not the issue. The issue is not coming back, which is the story of the prodigal son, which was option 2 that none of you took. Bitco. What? Camera? Talk? Check my phone. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Well, now I know we all know who it's from. Yeah. Okay.
Why are you laughing?
Because I'm like 11, and this topic's making me giggle. Okay, so the question from an anonymous person, could be anyone listening out there in Facebook or whatever. I'm kidding. The question is, talk about pleasure after marriage. And apparently, an Abuna said something that confused this random person. So the church always teaches, so we have a slight difference here from the Catholic Church. And so the Catholic Church, some groups of the Catholic Church, I think, believe that sex in marriage is only for the purpose of procreation. Right? That you're not supposed to have contraception, because contraception implies that you're using sex for something other than procreation, right? And that's why some Catholics have like 9 kids, right? We don't have that in our church, right? So we don't think that sex is only for the purpose of procreation. We think that the marriage bed is undefiled, and that what happens with the man and the woman, sex for the purpose of pleasure is fine, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that is a way that a man and a woman connect with one another. Right? And the man and the woman shall become one flesh, not one spirit, not one thought, not one emotion, one flesh. Right? So that's part of marriage, right? And that's totally fine. Right? And so the idea that you shouldn't have pleasure or whatever, these are actually heresies from the first century that we no longer, that no one ever adhered to. There are some influences from the Catholic Church that talk about, not having contraception because that's not okay. That's not something we believe in the Orthodox Church either, right? And our view on sex in general is a little bit softer than the Catholic Church, right? So like our priests are married and their priests aren't married. And they believe at some level, right, the priest has to be this higher thing, whereas we don't even see that as a higher thing, right? And we see that there are many saints who are married and have children, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not what makes you a saint, whether or not you have sex or not, or how much sex you have, or why you have it. It's your ability to die to yourself for other people, right? And to die to your own will for other people, and to sacrifice for other people. This is it. It's not, sex. And sex in general isn't as, I think our society has made sex to be, out to be this really big thing. And it is a pretty big thing, but it's not as big of a thing as you think it is, right? I think because it is portrayed the way it's portrayed in movies and media and everything else, it's like, oh my God, they slept together, and that's like this big watershed moment. And, ultimately, like, sex is great, but it's not all that. And that's not what makes a marriage. When I was in college, this guy named Josh McDowell came out and spoke to us, and he's a great speaker, and he's still written, he's written a lot of books, and I really like him. But he said something I really liked. He said, a great sex life will never give you a good marriage, but a good marriage will give you a good sex life. And I really like that, right? And that's very true. And so it's very different to say, you shouldn't marry for sex or because you're attracted to someone. And this is another thing of being too, tight-fisted and don't go out and don't talk to people. Because then you're like, there are a lot of couples that go, we just want to get married because we want to have sex, right? And there's just a lot of that. Okay, well, you do that, and a month later you're like, okay, we don't like each other. Sex is done, and it's just us, and I don't like him, it turns out, right? So you're so into having, because you're so repressed and it's so held back and it's so whatever, right? So when it's made out to be this taboo, horrible thing and great thing that you really need to, people get married just to do it. And then like a year later, they're done with each other, right? So sex should never be the basis of a marriage or, just physical attraction. And so sex can have that effect, right? Because if you're having premarital sex, it's very difficult for you to assess the other person more completely, right? Because this clouds your ability to make that decision, right? Because in the long term, I can assure you it isn't sex that's going to carry this marriage into year 10 and year 15 and year 20 and year 25. It's just not, right? And you can ask any married couple on earth and they'll tell you, right? That's just the way this works. Right? What carries you down the long haul is friendship and spirituality and sacrifice and commitment and all of these other things, right? Sex is not nearly as big of a part of marriage as anyone thinks, as you guys think it is. The married people all know, but you guys all don't. You all think it's much bigger than it actually is. Yes, sir?
It was related to like the red flags a little bit, like it's in that area of things. I was gonna ask, what are more of the core things that you should probably, I guess, agree on, or just the belief, or not necessarily the beliefs, but the things that you pretty much agree on that are not necessarily just red flags, but you should probably actually.
That's a good question. So so what are the things? Yeah. So, here's, and I think that we have a little bit of a misunderstanding here. I mean, obviously there's the big things, right? I mean, religion can be a big thing, right? Because especially when kids, do I want to have kids? Do I not? What's my overall approach to life? Those are the biggies, right? But after that, I think we're a little bit too enamored by being similar. And being similar is not necessarily the end all, it's really, the thing you really want to find in someone is someone you can fight with, right? and get through things with. That's really the test of whether or not marriage, how good the marriage is, right? Because it's like, well, we have these 8 things we disagree about. Oh, that's pretty good. Well, not if you can't fight about them, right? If every time you have a fight, everyone's an idiot, and then everyone walks off to their corner, and then, you can have 2 things, and then you'll get divorced over the 2 things, right? And there's a couple over here with 800 things, but they just fight and get through them, one after the next, right? So what you really want to find is someone you can have those discussions with, that you're track with, that you argue well with, because you're going to have lots of disagreements. There's thousands of things, right? You're going to fight 1,000 times, in the first 2 years, right? So that's just normal. What's abnormal is not getting through the fight, right? Or being upset for a month after the fight, or, she can't look at him and he can't look at her for weeks. It's like, bro, chill out, right? Like, you had a fight, get over it, and figure out the middle and pick it, So, so when you say, what are the red flags? The red flag is we can't fight, or we don't discuss well together, and we just see things so differently. That's more of an issue to me than the number of things or which things. You can get through almost anything. Religion is a big one, just kind of overall approach to, the big things, kids, life, money, whatever. Those are the biggies.
I don't know. I know, you don't want to be, too picky, I guess, because, it's just, it doesn't really make sense sometimes, to not talk to the person just because of, this small thing or whatever, but, yeah, I was just wondering, because it's, there's a difference between, one thing standing in the way, or is it just not, is it something that really does matter, or
Yeah.
does it just...
It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
There's some people just really upset by something, Okay, but every once in a while you hear about something silly and you're just like, okay, he doesn't brush his teeth before he goes to bed. Red flag, I can't handle it. You're like, okay, just shame him a little. He'll brush his teeth before he goes to bed. That's not the end of this relationship, So sometimes we pick on these little things that are just too little. I think overall, if I had to critique your generation, I say you're too picky. And another thing I'll say is I think part of what's happening, and believe me, there's a lot of clergy who are worried about this and thinking about why aren't people getting married. Part of it is there's, let's be realistic, right? There's a lot of Arab Islamic behavior in the homes, right? So there's a lot of men who are basically treating their wives as if they are Muslim men, right? And they come from that Arab world where the man says, and I sit down for dinner and the food needs to be there and warm and you need to be doing whatever, and basically somewhat borderline abusive to their wives, right? And so then there's a lot of girls who have seen their moms be treated very, very badly. And so then
changes your perspective.
It changes everything, right? And so a lot of the guys are like, yeah, I know how to be a man, just like my dad. All right. Well, it turns out, no, he's a good Muslim, but he's not a good Christian. Okay. And then a lot of the girls are like, I saw what my dad did to my mom, and that's never happening to me. So then a lot of the girls I notice are kind of extreme on the other end, where, you ask them to sacrifice, like, no, I'm not going to sacrifice any of my needs or any of my desires. This is what I want, and this is what I need, and I will not be repressed. And I'm like, what happened to whole marriage and sacrifice thing? We're both sacrificing. But they're PTSDing from what they saw their mom go through, which I understand, right? And the guys are on this other extreme of like, well, hey, I'm the man, I don't sacrifice. And she's like, I'm the woman, I will never sacrifice and nobody wants to sacrifice. And so I think we have a bit of a cultural issue running through as well. Not a lot of good role models at home. And a lot of young people just sort of dismiss their parents. And they're just like, yeah, my parents have a bad relationship. I'm not going to be like that. And you're like, well, slow down. Or do they? Or do they not? Maybe this is normal. And odds are you are going to be like your parents, right? Statistically speaking. Okay, so, someone was telling me about a wedding he went to at a Greek Orthodox church. And there they do like a little mini sermon in the middle of the wedding, right? So everyone sits down, and the priest, he's on the mic, and he's kind of talking to the couple. It's very casual, and he says, "Look at all these couples in the audience. You think any of them are happily married? None of them are happily married." And everyone starts laughing because he's right? I was like, I love this priest. I've never met him. It's my kind of people, right? And he's like, look, none of these people are happily married. That's not what this is about. Marriage isn't about just happiness and, and kumbaya and we hold hands and we, look at sunsets. All right, that's the first week. Congratulations, honeymoon's over. Okay? So marriage is work, right? And no, they're not just happy, right? They're attaining holiness by sacrificing for one another, right? And she drives him crazy and he drives her crazy. All over this church, right? So, I like that, that kind of perspective. And so I think the more of that we have, we're like, okay, I'm working on myself to accept my partner for who they are and what they are. There's some things I can change, some things I can't, some things I push back on, some things I don't, we can agree to put the dirty dishes in this sink and the clean dishes in that sink. That's not hard things to change, right? Those are logistic things. Those are easy. Whites in this, darks in this hamper, right? That's fine. But there's bigger things we just have to learn to, yeah.
On that note, we say that, this is like Islamic influence, or, how things are at home. But even when it comes to our marriage, like prayer, in the midst of the prayer, it says, women submit to your husbands. Yes, it says, men love your husbands the way that Christ loved the church. But we're the ones submitting. So, I don't know what influence that comes from, but isn't that in itself setting a precedent?
That's a good question. So, what you're quoting is St. Paul in Ephesians, and I think a lot of girls don't like that language, and unfortunately, in the marriage ceremony, there isn't much to the man about sacrificing. There's a lot more to the girl about submitting. I agree with that, and that, I don't know, there's a bias, there's asymmetry, for sure, and I agree with that. What I will say is, and again, I have a talk on the SoundCloud if you want on this, but this on Ephesians, like what St. Paul is saying, he says to every gender, he gives a different instruction. And the instructions are not random, right? So guys are generally, selfish, right? Guys don't do well thinking of others that much, right? They just kind of think about themselves a lot. And it's difficult for them to be selfless and nurture, and even, and you see it even with children, right, and the baby, and like, well, I want to go out. How come we never go out? Like, so we have a baby, right? And that thought doesn't occur to him, right? He's like, okay, but I really like going out, and he talks just like that, right? So guys have this, a selfishness to them, right? And then St. Paul says, and he's almost mocking men. He goes, love her as much as you love yourself. It's a shot, right? And he's like, no one's ever hated his own body, right? So why don't you love her as much as you love your own self? Okay? And it's a very directed thing, but it's very difficult for a man to do that, right? It's actually very difficult for him to be outside himself and think of another person, how another person feels, right? How many times have girls said to men, how do you think that made me feel? And he's like, oh. And it takes about 3 minutes, right? While he kind of looks at the sky, he's like, oh, yeah. And he's going to do it again tomorrow, right? And she's just looking at him like, you really didn't think of how that would make me feel? And he's just like, no, I did not, right? Because he doesn't do that very well, right? So, okay, that's what guys are, right? So St. Paul, what he's telling them is, I want you to love her as much as you love you, which is hard for a man. But that's his salvation. That's him being very sacrificial, right? Him dying the way Christ died, dying to himself. Not some heroic, I'll take a bullet for my wife. Any guy will do that, right? But dying to the little things, right? You want me to go shopping with you? You want me to pick out? That's dying, right? For a guy. And he's asking him to do that. And that's hard for a man to do. It's not hard for a woman to do. It's hard for a man to do. But he says that because that's men's salvation is in that, right? Now for the woman, it's a different command because women are different, right? Women don't like to be told what to do. Women don't like to submit to people, especially to men, right? You know, you tell a woman, do that. She's like, that's the one thing I'm not doing. Right? And you got a little head bob and all the things, right? Because, you know, she doesn't do well being ordered around, right? And so then St. Paul says to her, he gives her the hardest commandment for her. Now, I want you to submit to him for your salvation, right? Just like he has to be outside himself for his salvation, because that's hard for him. For you, it's easy for you to think of how that makes other people feel, but it's not really good. You're not good at submitting to other people and being told what to do, right? So learn how to do that for your salvation, right? So each command is different, but each command is very hard for the person, right? So they're different, but they're not, and they're asymmetrical for sure, but it isn't, I think, as people imagine, because when girls hear that, I think a lot of times what they do is they replay what dad did to mom growing up, right? And what dad did to mom, and forgive me for my very blunt language, was very Arab culture, male-dominated Islam, okay? So there, submission, oh, you mean like he tells her what to do and she does whatever he says, and even though he's an idiot? No, not interested, thank you, right? So, and the guy thinks he's always right, and no one questions Baba, and Baba came home, and and where's the sacrifice, right? So when only one side of that happens, right? When the guy isn't dying for his wife, when he isn't thinking of his wife, when he would do anything for her, right? Let me reverse it. When a guy does all those things, right, and is always thinking about her, and how does this make her feel, and what does she need in the morning, and let me get that ready for her, and of course she'll submit to him, right? There's a circle there that's happening, right? But what happens is when one part of the circle gets interrupted, the other half is like, well, screw you then. I'm not interested in doing my half, right? And it goes the other way. When the woman's like, I'm absolutely not going to listen to anything you have to say. Well, what do you think he's going to do, right? He's going to go, well, I'm absolutely not going to die to you. I'm going to do me. All right, well, you be a jerk. I'll be a jerk. You be a jerk. And then it cycles the wrong way. Right? So I think what we hear in that is we only hear one side of it, and only one side of it's talked about. We don't give a lot of talks on how men need to think about how that makes the other person feel, or how to be emotionally strong for another person, or to sacrifice for another person. We give lots of talks to girls on how to submit to their man, right? Or at least it's implied a lot, but not a lot to the guys. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys are learning from watching their dad, who isn't doing any of those things. In some cases, not all cases. Q&As? Q's? Would Q? You have another one? Yeah. Fire. I paid her to come because I knew nobody would have Q's. I told you. You're all worthless at Q's, especially you.
Anybody else want to go?
Yusuf has a question. No, he doesn't. He's just... I'm good.
No, it's fine. My question's a little off topic now. And it's regarding why the church is so adverse to the idea of macroevolution.
Macroevolution?
Yeah, so evolution on a larger scale. I know Abuna, once one of the Abunas said, we believe in microevolution. We believe in the evolution of, smaller things, fish turning to lizard, this and that. Why is it hard for Christians to grasp the idea that maybe we might have come from animals?
From monkeys?
No, not necessarily.
You mean just? I don't know the difference between micro and macroevolution, but I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I'll just So I think there's a lot of different. So when you say why are Christians adverse to? I immediately choke on that sentence because you're generalizing, and unfortunately saying and Abuna said, as if that holds any weight with me at all, right? So I've heard a lot of things, just silliness, right? There's a lot of people threatened by evolution unnecessarily. No one said the church doesn't think evolution is correct, that there isn't a lot of scientific backing there's tons of scientific backing for evolution. There's also tons of holes in evolution, right? And it's a theory just like any other theory. And the only problem with evolution that I can see is when you say, aha, see, no God. Right? And so, which evolution, actually, if you're a real scientist, you can't actually say, right? Because, we're supposed to have a hypothesis and then evidence that's consistent with the hypothesis. There's no evidence consistent with that hypothesis, right? You actually can't say there's no God from what you just observed, right? That, just because that finch lived because its beak is whatever doesn't mean God doesn't exist. I mean, like, how'd you get that?
If anything, I feel like it glorifies.
It can and can't, whatever, right? But so there's a lot of Christians who are threatened by evolution unnecessarily, right? And every once in a while you just hear sermons on this, and you're just like, wow, that's so wrong. And in fact, in our diocese, I don't think that's the case. Like,
there was a convention, I want to say 4 years back. It's been a while since I've been to a Bible study or a meeting or something, but the last one that I went to was Archangel, where they brought an author that it was the book. It was Who is Adam, that talked about mitochondrial DNA. And for me, science is it's a pivotal point in my life. But even through this huge thing that they threw and everything, it was still speaking on a very micro scale and making sure that we knew that it wasn't, macroevolution from the sense of actually like organisms diverging into completely different organisms. So that's where I say I feel like it's a church-wide view.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are so many different Christian perspectives on this. I mean, like in the Lutheran Church, there's what's called young earth creationists, right? They believe the earth is 5,000 years old, right? And you can give them all the carbon dating in the world and all dinosaurs. I mean, that one's hard. And there's I don't know. That's what the Bible says, right? And so that, to me, is an extreme position. But there's a whole group of Christians who are new earth creationists. And I think, I think just delving into this as a this, us versus them, they're right, we're wrong, I think it's just is unnecessary, right? I mean, how these things happen and how God set them to be is, how the story of Adam actually, Adam was a real person, but was he the way it's described? Was it the days the way they were described? I mean, there's a million questions there. And the Bible isn't a book of history, it's a book of theology, right? So the story of Adam in paradise is a story of theology, right? It talks about the consequence of sin and shame, and a lot of things come out of that story, right? And it's not about, what kinds of trees were in the garden and when this happened, and it's a story about theology, about God's relationship to man. And when we reduce it to a book of history and say, well, you see, and this kind of tracks with, you can do that. I guess it's fun for some people, right? But it's also, to me, a distraction, right? In the end, Christian life is about living with, trying to be the best person I can be to other people around me. Love God and love your neighbor, right? Now, if we want to have a long debate about evolution, okay, are you going to give the bum on the street $5 or not? Or should I do it? Okay, and thank you for that 4-hour conference on whatever you talked about. Did you give the bum the $5 or not? Right? So that to me is way, way more important than whatever you just said. And talking is a lot easier than helping another person or dealing with someone I don't like or suffering through, someone's weaknesses. It's a lot funner to talk about big things that I read and I can put up on a PowerPoint. So there's a lot of distraction. We can get ourselves easily distracted in the church, and we love to get ourselves distracted in the church. I love to talk about anyone but myself and my own faults and my own brokenness. And I don't want to face my brokenness, so I'll give you a long lecture on something fancy and tell you what the fathers said and history and right? And then that makes me feel better that I'm kind of a controlling person and manipulative. And I don't want to deal with that. So I'll talk to you about the Council of Nicaea. It's an escape. So sometimes we get a little carried away. Yeah, people do this with the book of Revelation too. They're just like going off. Let me interpret, chapter 11, you notice blah, blah, blah. And this guy said this, and they're just going off on the book of Revelation. It's like, your judgment day is going to come, and we'll figure it out then, and you could spend a lot of time on this. And maybe people are curious, what's going to happen? Oh, why don't you just go help your neighbor right now, and then we'll discuss that when you're dead, right? Any other questions? She's carried the lion's share of questions tonight. I'm very impressed. I'm glad you came. Yes?
So I have a lot of Muslim friends at school.
Okay.
And we got into a debate today, actually. And we were debating about to differentiate, if you could, God's plan and our free will to change that. And
that topic.
their argument was, we have our marriage plans, we have our, when you're going to die, of course, and what college you're going to go to. That was their argument. And
Is planned
It's
by
planned.
by plant by
plans.
God.
Yeah, that's planned. But everything else you can change.
So college is planned by God, but what major is can
You
change.
can change that.
All right. So you're going to UCI, but you can pick the major. But you're going to UCI, even if you don't apply.
Exactly.
You're still going. That's weird. I don't think that's.
You have any tangerine analogy? Maybe?
Into Amar. Different people have different perspectives on this, and I think even the fathers will sometimes, how much is God's will, and I think sometimes, so I'll give you my personal opinion, is, sometimes I think we think God cares, God's controlling and caring a lot more about things than I think he does, right? So we'll get all, does God want me to go to USC or UCLA? What does God want? What does God want? God doesn't care, right? So, God wants you to be a good person. Give the bum $5 and go to UCLA or USC, whatever, right? So God wants us to be with him, right? And if you ask a good parent, right, and you say, what job does you want your son to have? It says, I want my son to be happy, and I want him to love God, and I want him to love me. I want to have a relationship with my son. When he's 40, I want him to come visit me. Is he a doctor or dentist? And I don't care what he's doing. I want him to come visit me, and I want him to come talk to me. Right? That's what a parent wants. Right? So God is a father, and he's just like, I want you to talk to me. That's all. Right? So how much of that's free will? In the end, the way God uses our free will, to me, is miraculous. Because he allows free will to a great extent, like to an amazing extent, right? But yet it serves, it serves his purpose, right? So at some level, a lot of things are God's will. Like he allows things to happen all the time, right? So you can say, well, I didn't mean to, or this person did something bad. Is that God's will? And you say, well, no, that's the person's will, right? But God also allowed it to happen, you look at the story of Job, right? And Satan said, hey, can I, kill all his sheep? And God said, yeah, kill him. And he did. Is that God's will? Kinda. He let him do it. And he said, can I kill his kids? And God said, yeah, kill him. So he let him. So is it God's will that, yeah, it kind of is. Right? So God didn't stop these things from happening, right? He allows what we'll call bad things to happen, right? But in the end, we learn to realize it's not always so bad, And then God can use even these bad things for His glory, right? Which makes them not bad, right? So, you look at the story of the cross, right? And the story of the cross is man's salvation from the beginning of time, right? From the story of Adam, the plan was for God to come down and die on the cross, right? So that wasn't plan B, it was plan A. Okay, it's not like, oh, Adam fell, crap, what do I do now? Okay, I'll send Jesus, right? That's not how it happened. And so you say, okay, that's God's will that Jesus came. He said, for this reason I came onto the earth to die on the cross, right? So that's why he's here, right? Peter tried to stop him and he said, get behind me, Satan. That's why I'm here, right? Okay, so when you read the story, is that how it happened? Is it God's will? No, Judas sold him. So was it Judas's will? No, the scribes and the Pharisees betrayed him, and they're the ones who went to Pontius Pilate and told him to crucify him, kill him. So was it their will? Well, no, it was Pilate's will, because Pilate's the one who made the order to put him on the cross. And the only reason Pilate got encouraged is when he asked the people, they said, crucify him, crucify him. So is it their will? Whose will was it? I thought we said it's God's will. Or was it Judas and the scribes and the Pontius Pilate and the soldiers and the... Right? So all of these bad people doing bad things came together and made God's will. Right? So that's just the amazing part of it. Right? So, yes, I think we have a very free will. We can do anything we want. But yet, I think it's always within God's will to stop at any time. But He allows us to do these things. Did God want me to go kill that guy? No, He didn't want me to. But He didn't stop me either. He could have stopped me. Gun could have jammed. Cops could have caught me. Right? But He didn't. So He let it happen.
Just to add to that a little bit. I think we have most free will, but I think it's important in knowing that in whatever you decide, God will have a plan set out. So for example, if you decide to go to UCI, for example, God will provide and He has a kind of he will have things work out for you. He always has a plan for you basically, but you have the free will to decide on where to go.
Look, God's going to be with us no matter what,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
But what we don't want to do is we don't want to reduce God to the God who takes care of me. It's not the right way to say it, but who takes care of me will make everything work out for me, right? Did God make me get cancer?
I'm not saying that, but
but within whatever you choose.
yeah.
And this is the miraculous part, right? So within whatever Judas, Pontius Pilate, the scribes and the Pharisees, the chief priests chose, He worked out His will, right? And so that's the amazing part of this, is that we choose, and yet it ends up all working in this amazing way, right? This harmony that kind of comes together. Yes?
So we could have chosen differently and the same result would have happened.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if we chose differently, I think different things would happen, right? And I don't think God's forcing us into an outcome, because the outcome is bigger than I need you to go to UCLA Dental School, so what I'll do is I'll close this and I'll close. The outcome is I want you to be with me, right? And as a parent, do I try to lean my kids one way or another if I think, yeah, sure. But if you don't, I'll still call you at University of Nebraska, and I will write you letters, and I'll come out and visit you. And even if you chose Nebraska and nobody wants to go to Nebraska, I'll go to Nebraska. Right? So I don't think it always comes out. There's not some, preset. I think it's pre-known, but it's not predetermined. But what do I know? Any other questions? She left. You guys, this is your chance. Get your questions in. Zach, don't tell her I said that. All right, I think we've gone long enough, hour and 5 minutes. All right, glory be to God for everything.